Paul, Republican candidate for president. Dr. Paul, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let's start right at the very top, the issues. This is what you have been saying on the campaign stump. Quote, I'd like to get rid of the IRS. I'd want to get rid of the income tax. Abolish it.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
What would happen to all those lost revenues? How would we fund our government?
We have to cut spending. You can't get rid of the income tax if you don't get rid of some spending. But you know, if you got rid of the income tax today, you'd have about as much revenues as we had 10 years ago. And the size of government wasn't all that bad 10 years ago. So there's sources of revenues other than the income tax. You know, you have a tariff, excise taxes, user fees, highway fees. So there's still a lot of money. But the real problem is spending. You know, we lived a long time in this country without an income tax. Up until 1913, we didn't have it.
But if you eliminate the income tax, do you know how much lost revenue that would be?
A lot. But
over $1 trillion.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, but we could save hundreds of billions of dollars if we had a sensible foreign policy. I mean, if you're going to be the policeman of the world, you need that. You need the income tax to police the world and run the welfare state. I want a constitutional-sized government.
Would you replace the income tax with anything else?
Not if I could help it. You know, there are some proposals where probably almost anything would be better than the income tax, but there's a lot of shortcomings with the sales tax. But it would probably be slightly better, the income tax, so it would be an improvement. But the goal is to cut the spending, get back to a sensible-sized government.
But if you had a flat tax, a 30% consumption tax, that would be very, very punishing to the poor and middle class.
Oh, I know. That's why I don't want it.
So you'd have nothing.
I want to cut spending. I want to use the Constitution as our guide, and you wouldn't need the income tax.
Let's talk about some of the ways you recommend. Quote, I'd start bringing our troops home, not only from the Middle East, but from Korea, Japan, and Europe, and save enough money to slash the deficit. How much money would that save?
To operate our total foreign policy, when you add up everything, there's been a good study on this, it's nearly $1 trillion a year. So I would think if you brought our troops home, you could save hundreds of billions of dollars. It's, you know, it's 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, but you can start saving immediately by changing the foreign policy and not be the policeman of the world. We should have the foreign policy that George Bush ran on. You know, no nation building, no policing of the world, a humble foreign policy. We don't need to be starting wars. That's my argument.
How many troops do we have overseas right now?
I don't know the exact number, but more than we need. We don't need any.
It's 572,000. And you'd bring them all home?
As quickly as possible. They do not serve our interest to be overseas. They get us into trouble, and we can defend this country without troops in Germany, troops in Japan. How do they help our national defense? Doesn't make any sense to me. Troops in Korea? Since I've been in high school? Well, you know, it doesn't make sense.
Under President Paul, if North Korea invaded South Korea, would we respond?
Why should we, unless the Congress declared war? I mean, why are we there? South Korea, they're begging and pleading to unify their country, and we get in their way. They want to build bridges and go back and forth. Vietnam, we left under the worst of circumstances. The country is unified. They have become westernized. We trade with them. Their president comes here. In Korea, we stayed there, and look at the mess. I mean, the problems still exist, and it's drained $1 trillion over these last, 50 years. So stop. We can't afford it anymore. We're going bankrupt. All empires end because the countries go bankrupt and the currency crashes. That's what's happening, and we need to come out of this sensibly rather than waiting for a financial crisis.